I think I'm pretty Taiwanese. If you live in Taipei City, you've never really been to Taiwan.
Yeah.
A person tasting their father's feces to see if he's healthy, and that's considered, you know, really very loyal. But there's definitely a strain of xenophobia, the Celestial Kingdom, right? Tianlongguo. I see Taiwan almost as two separate countries. They also show some examples of filial piety. Japan might be the worst. Nursing your husband's mother or something because she's too old and doesn't have teeth. Oh, China's changing and Taiwan's still stuck. I encourage 台湾人多看看你自己的国家好不好？
Hi, 大家好，欢迎来 Welcome to Taiwan. Today we are in Kaohsiung to bring you a very special interview with our Honorable Mr.
I'm Eric Michael Smith from Formosa Files.
Right. So, before we go, please don't forget to click that subscription button, like the video, and help us share if you can. Your likes are very important. Also, in the description below, there is a membership link if you want to support the channel so we can travel around. Please don't forget to join and be a member, and we have some special videos for you.
And check this out too.
Yeah.
My name is Eric Michael Smith. Chinese, very simple, just Ai Rei Ke. I was born in Amsterdam, grew up traveling the world, but most of my life has been in Taiwan.
How long have you been in Taiwan?
It's complicated because I first came when I was too young to remember the date. Probably we're approaching 30 years now. I think I'm pretty Taiwanese. Often when I'm talking with people and I say we, almost invariably I'm talking about, you know, we as in Taiwan.
Should we go back memory lane? Why in the first place you came to Taiwan?
I'm the eldest of 10 children. And my parents were missionaries. They came over to Asia in the early 80s, and my dad's idea was to try to get into China. And they told him that a good idea would be to come to Taiwan and learn the language, sort of get used to Chinese society. So we did end up spending a short time in China, but in the end, we came back to Taiwan. And then time in Japan, time in other places around Asia. But eventually, as a young adult, I decided to make Taiwan my permanent home. So you could say I've been living here uninterrupted probably since '97.
How do Taiwanese still see you?
I think that Taiwanese in general are willing to give you the benefit of the doubt, and they're quite open and accepting. But there's definitely a strain of xenophobia, or maybe that's too cruel. Some people say that, you know, anyone can become an American. You move there, you live there for long enough, and even though you're from Syria or you're from wherever, right, you can become an American. Japan, China, Taiwan, Korea, it's very hard to become one of those people, even if you've been there a really, really long time. Japan might be the worst. However, once you prove to a Taiwanese person that, you know, you speak the language, you've bothered to learn about the culture, to travel, to see the island, and, you know, to be frank, I know more about the history of Taiwan than local people do because I run a history podcast. So after that is demonstrated, then you are sort of granted honorary Taiwanese.
Things that Taiwanese do before and things that Taiwanese do now. What are some of the differences?
So when I first got to Taiwan and my memory starts to kick in, I remember we still stood up in movie theaters before watching a movie and we sang the national anthem, which is something that most people today would find ridiculous. They're double 10 days. There used to be military procession, not White Terror. White Terror is a specific period, but by the time I got here, we were definitely beginning the transition to a different kind of Taiwan. And I believe I was here the day that Jiang Jingguo died in January of 1988. The TVs went black and white. So Jiang Jingguo was the one who came to recognize in his late years that if they didn't move towards democracy, that they would lose the support of the democratic community, America, other places like that. So he knew that they had to get rid of martial law and that they had to start bringing in Taiwanese Because if you're going to run a country with only mainlanders or the children of mainlanders, when the majority of the population are Taiwanese, you're going to sow the seeds of, eventual revolution or something. So he starts taking steps in the early 80s, and then by the mid 80s, it's really getting going. And then martial law is finally lifted in 87. But I mean, just think about it. I was in China in 85 when Wham! Was performing for the first time. The first concert by a Western band in China is Wham! You've got China opening up and Deng Xiaoping and this whole idea of like, oh, China's changing, and Taiwan's still stuck in the martial law era. So that's when, roughly when Katharine Graham from the Washington Post came over and interviewed Zhang Jingguo. And she's like, when are you going to move? And he's like, we're working on it. And he did. It was hard, right? Because we're talking about convincing generals and convincing this whole group of people who claim to represent all these places in China. So this guy in his 70s, he's officially the representative of Chengdu in China. And he has a seat in parliament in Taiwan representing Chengdu. And he's getting a salary for that, So how do you convince this guy to retire? Yeah. And how do you move away from that? How do you move away from Taiwan as a province of this and start focusing on Taiwan as the Republic of China, but accepting the fact that you're not retaking the mainland anytime soon, if ever. And, well, obviously there's a lot more foreigners here today than there were back in the day, so to speak. We don't have, down here in Kaohsiung, a very good representation of ethnic groups or ethnic diversity. So if you're African or you're a Black American or something, you are going to get stared at, and kids are going to want to, comment and stuff. But most of my friends who, they understand there's no malicious intent, like they're just curious and they're fine with it. So even today, I'll walk into 7-Eleven and some kid will go, oh, 好高的外国人. And, I just point back and go, oh, 一个小台湾人. And, they'll giggle. And 20 years ago, there was a certain lack of decorum in certain areas. So yeah, you would have these women in bikinis at temple festivals with a pole on a truck, or maybe a procession, like the way you see the Mazu processions now. Yeah, back in the day, there would have been a truck and playing music, and then some women hanging on the pole. And then, of course, there were the betel nut beauties. They used to be the ones who sold pinglang in the little boxes, and they would be dressed in sometimes almost nothing, and that was the part of the attraction to get you to come buy that. The government clamped down on that, and you can still find them kind of far away, but not really in the downtown areas anymore. Yeah, and by the way, if you like betel nut, which I do, I don't chew it very often because it's bad for you, but if you do like betel nut, don't buy it from the place with the sexy girl. Buy it from the place with the old ama, or the place that's really, they have the better one. The other one is a distraction to get you to buy the cheap bad one. Get it from the ama. Tip, yeah. Pro tip.
Okay, very interesting.
Back in the day, it was much more of a militaristic, style. I remember 1997 was a year of serious crime. We had the Chen Jingxing case. When they executed him, he donated his organs, and the news at that time was much less regulated than it is today. So the media used to be really, really quite wild in Taiwan. So crime in general is not something that I think about in Taiwan, which is something I'm really glad. There are many cities in the US where you wouldn't want to be out at 2 a.m. But here, I could be pretty much anywhere at any time of the day in any state of awareness, and it's reasonably safe. That's something that the Taiwanese are justifiably proud about. Travel is an interesting thing. So, in America, there's a good chunk of people who don't even have passports. And here, almost everyone has left the country. usually to Japan, you know, is the favorite location. But at least they go out and they see the world. And I think it gives them kind of a bit of a better sense of their place in the world, how their country relates. Like if you've been to Vietnam, you've been to Macau, you've been to China, you've been to Korea and Japan, and you can sort of understand where Taiwan fits in Asia. Whereas, you know, for so many Americans, they're the center of the world in their mind, and that's because they haven't done traveling. But overall, the Taiwanese are surprisingly humble in many regards, and I'm really quite in admiration of some of it. For example, we have to play in international sports games as Chinese Taipei, which is such a stupid name that it makes my head want to explode, because the majority of people playing in the most recent baseball game, well, number one, none of them live in Taipei. Not one has registration in Taipei. 3 of them live in Kaohsiung, but they're spread out all over, and many of our athletes are indigenous people, and they're from Taidong or Hualien or something, and they're not Chinese either. But we don't hear a lot of griping about it because it's the formula that they've accepted, and I hear people tell me, you know, it's better to compete than to not. So if it were another country around the world, I can think of many, many places that would just refuse, you know. So in that sense, I don't know if humility is the right word, but maybe pragmatism is a better term. A pragmatic people. And I like that about Taiwan.
From your own personal experience, what do you think is this root of the safe face thing with the Taiwanese?
Asian, it's not just Asian. I don't know, I don't know any culture that doesn't have it to some degree, right? But when you're talking about a country or a culture that has a Confucianist, very strong Confucianist angle, I'll give you an example from my daughter. She's in high school, and the teacher might misspell an English word on the board. And my daughter will know this, but if she brings it up, it's only going to cause her suffering for the next, several months or the next semester. So you do not question the teacher. You do not question your elders. And if you go to the Lotus Lake pagoda over there, you'll see, as you walk through it, they show you the different things of hell. And they also show some examples of filial piety, like good people. And one of them is a person tasting their father's feces to see if he's healthy, and that's considered, really very loyal. Another one is nursing your husband's mother or something because she's too old and doesn't have teeth, So this whole thing of the elder is always right. The teacher is, one step shy of a god. Harmony comes from everybody knowing their place and knowing how to stay in their lane and not getting out of it. This is hardwired into every Confucianist society, and I think you'd probably hear the same thing from someone who grew up in Korea or China or even Japan. I'm not sure about every country in the world, of course, but it's certainly not a unique Taiwanese phenomenon.
If you are to change anything in Taiwan, what would it be?
I don't like the people, the YouTubers, no offense, who only point out the good about Taiwan and sort of only tell Taiwanese people what they want to hear. Ni hao bang, ni hao bang, ni hao bang. Because there are a lot of things that need fixing, just like there are in every other country on earth. I've been to 30 countries and I've never found utopia, right? So here, for example, we could do a lot better with being more accepting of Southeast Asian people who come to work as caregivers. There's a strong current of either racism or xenophobia or whatever towards these people, which is very sad. We need these people. We're running out of people. By 2070, the population of Taiwan is projected to fall to 15 million, which is not viable. There's still a bit of a callousness towards littering and, just simple things like don't throw your cigarette on the ground. Come on, stop that. So I also joke because I lived for 10 years in Taipei City, and if you live in Taipei City, you've never really been to Taiwan.
Yes.
I call it, not I call it, but we call it the Celestial Kingdom, right? Tianlongguo. And it's so true that as soon as you cross one of those rivers, you know, and get over into Sanchong or whatever, you start to get an inkling of what Taiwan is, and it's not the same. Taipei is an artificial creation, and I like it, especially when I was younger and single and all of that. It was a great place to frolic, but if you want to really enjoy Taiwan, you've got to get out of Taipei. You got to see. So of course, you know, Taoyuan is a very unique place. Taichung has its charms, but for me, you need to get past the Zhuoshui River and get down into the south, because modern Taiwan began from Tainan, Jiayi, Kaohsiung area. You know, all the last 400 years of history, really the base for it is down here. So I see Taiwan almost as two separate countries between the north and the south. There's just so much difference in the speed, the attitude, the food, the way people speak, just so much. So if you want to explore, you got to see more than Taipei. And of course the East Coast, gorgeous, right? You got to get over there. And what's a little bit sad is that many of my Taiwanese friends have never been to some of these places. And I've been told many times, yeah, like, you love this island more than we do, or you know more about this island than we do. And I'm not going to take that as a compliment or something, but there's reasons for this. Back in the 70s and 80s, right, you're living in a very repressive state. And your parents probably would have told you, if you asked about something historical, you know, it's best not to talk about it. A lot of things were just like, best just to, So there kind of evolved a culture where it was better to just not be too curious. And this is the one thing that I'm hoping we can move forward in the next decade or so, that curiosity can become a part of the Taiwanese tradition. Because if you're an English teacher and you teach kids, you'll probably notice that when they're really young, they're just so fun and curious and full of life and everything. And then the school system just beats it out of them. And the curiosity is destroyed. And that continues till adulthood. You go to the office, you sit there. I see people in the office who get up out of their seat maybe 4 times in one day. And 3 of them are for bathroom runs and the other one is to get their lunch. And, you know, I don't know how you do that. Curiosity is something that wasn't encouraged. Then there's also sort of an inferiority complex. So like they find it hard to believe that I'm telling them that this forest in Liuegui is superb. And I'm saying that based on the fact that I've been to Yellowstone National Park and I've been to, you know, all these other places, and I'm saying, compare, you know, this is a really awesome place. And it's either they're too humble or like, no, you know, but yeah, it is odd. It is odd. And I hope that that will change. Some of my Taiwanese friends say, oh, Eric, you're just overthinking things. We're just lazy. And I'm like, fair enough. Aren't we all? So I encourage Taiwan 人多看看你自己的国家好不好?
We have this, the 3 tribes in the Dutch Formosa.
This book I'm holding right here?
Yes.
Yeah. Shameless promotion.
Could you take us through what brought this about?
This is an English translation of a book that was published a while back by a rather famous doctor, Chen Yaozhang, and he wrote the book Puppet Flower that became the Netflix show Sekalu. I don't know if you saw that. This is just after the US Civil War. A ship, an American ship, crashes into the reefs off the coast of Kending. So America invaded Taiwan once and America lost. The American Marines tried to charge up the Kending jungle and didn't work out real well. And then this is his other book. And in this book, he's talking about the time just after Koxinga or Zhenzhengong came over from China to evict the Dutch, who were the colonial or would-be colonial masters of Taiwan. They controlled an area roughly from around current-day Jiayi down to near here, but their base was in Tainan, in the Anping area. So this is a real person who really was in Taiwan, one of Koxinga's generals, Chen Zi. Maria is the fictional daughter of a real Dutch missionary who was here. He was eventually executed, I believe, by Koxinga, and his son later becomes the next ruler of Taiwan. A story of the kingdom of Dongning. All of that is available here. FormosaFiles.com, or you can find it at any podcast platform.
Do you have anything else to tell Taiwanese people?
台湾的历史是真的很有趣，然后这10几年的有好多新的东西出来了，包括新的 books 或是 research paper 或是什么东西，然后现在我们是真的多了解非常有趣的 story， 然后因为台湾的位置是刚好这日本、大陆这样子中间这样子，这400年的历史是我自己觉得是独一无二，然后里面的故事是I can't find another example of such a small place with so many interesting stories. And it makes me very, very sad that so many people say that history is boring. So I've tried to do a very short 中文版的 Formosa Files, 我们都大概10分钟而已的，然后英文版是半个小时，然后以后如果有空，我看看可不可以做一些 video. I'm happy that you're doing videos and going places. But my biggest message would be, your history is amazing. Our history is amazing, and let's learn more about it. And I think the more you know about yourself and your own history, the more proud you are of yourself, and then the more confident you are. As you look into your own history and you learn more, you learn the good, the bad, the ugly, and you start to be able to put a deeper understanding of what and what Taiwan is. And for me, it's a really wonderful story. A story that includes a transition to democracy that did not involve significant violence. And I know some people will give me crap over that because they're going to say, oh, 228 or whatever, but I'm talking about in the 1980s, you know, when we moved from martial law to the first presidential election, then the first change of political power, there was not violence in the way that there was in South America or Africa or Europe or Romania, you know, pick your place where there was a revolution. And this is something that we should be really, really proud of, and also something that we should fight hard to keep.
All right, thank you very much for watching, and hope you like this video. And please don't forget
subscribe.
To click that subscription button, like the video, and help us share if you can. And also, his website and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube links will be in the description below. You can go check him out, and he has some very interesting podcasts about history and culture of Taiwan.
谢谢.
Yeah, and thank you very much.
Thank you for coming so far. It's amazing. You came all the way down from Taoyuan. That's a long, long drive.
Yeah.
Enjoy our weather.